screen. We will now have, this is the time to get the best answer to our poll. Which straw would you use to discuss the role of plastic in the circular economy? We invite Marcos Iorio, consultant of EcoCircular Projetos Regenerativos. Good afternoon, Marcos. Wonderful. Right. So thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this Congress that's so well organized with high caliber speakers, with such great presentations. What a challenge to talk about Nuno Aguiar with such a thorough presentation. I'll bring up Isaac Newton. I'm not saying that I'm like Newton, but if I can take another step, it means starting from the shoulders of giants. This is about a project I'm participating. The idea is to remove 100% of the packaging from landfills and make them 100% circular. When we consider urban metabolism, this is the point uh, of our study. I wanted to compare ourselves to consider how much material is being buried in Brazil. And I saw a document that has been recently released by the Ministry of the Environment in 2021. And I did the gravimetric analysis to see how Brazil stands. And I saw in that document, in that report, that there was a quote from 2012. So 2021 with 2012 data. I went to the 2012 report of the Ministry of the Environment. I saw the same chart, the same graph. And there, they said it dated back to 2008. And then I went to 2008 and they said the data was from 2007. And then I went to the source of the data, 2007. And I tried to find out what methodology was used. And this number had been surveyed by questions probably sent by email to 300 municipalities in a universe of 5,400. If city governments knew what mix of materials were landfilled. So this is how people uh, do politics. So it's really hard to have information that is really accurate if the data is gathered like this. Without data, you just an opinion to give. You just have an opinion to give. We need better data to have narratives that are not based on opinions alone. In 2001, the United Nations had this agenda for 2015 with 8 major issues, and that were expanded to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals later. And this is, I'm wearing blue, and most speakers as today is the uh, World's Day of the Oceans. We've been discussing life in water, and this is a highly important topic to be discussed. And we know that humankind now is facing one of its greatest challenges, climate change. So all design proposals or all products that are being designed, we may be solving one problem, but we may be creating another problem at the same time. We need to measure the results of our intentions. I have a chart that I like to discuss. That's a graph by Addie MacArthur about losses to the environment or leaks into the environment, not only to plastics. It may apply to any materials. When I was raised as a child, everyone used the word recycled as the silver bullet. But in this study, they say that if we do what all governments do, if we have all our strategies on the table, in 2040, we'll just be able to address 7% of all the material leaks into the environment. So we need to review our strategies. Nuno has just shown this chart, which I think is very clear. The circular economy is not just about recycling. Recycling is just one of the verbs that we'll be using in order to leave the linear economy behind. Take, make, use, and dispose. We need many more verbs, including recycling, but also returning, reusing, repairing. And companies shouldn't have just making their impact neutral, but rather to create positive impact, to do more than what was extracted. We need to regenerate. Uh, this is our goal as companies. Another chart that quantifies our what we need to do, again, proposed by the uh, Ellen MacArthur Foundation. This is a model of the action that can be taken. It quantifies the effects of each of these actions. So substitution or replacement of materials, for instance, in packaging, it will have a role, but this role in this model, it just is 17% efficient. And then in reducing, we have a large portion of compostable materials and new materials as well. But then the proposal of reducing means reusing. And the largest part has a lot to do with business models, which I'll be discussing later. And plastic has a, an extremely important role when we rethink its use. We also need to improve our mechanical recycling, both in open and closed systems. And until 40, sorry, chemical recycling will have an important role, but it won't be any silver bullet at all. All these strategies need to be resorted to address the problems. In order to have an effective shift in our model, you need to consider or take innovation into account. And I'll again mention the Ellen MacArthur report called Innovation at the Source. So, and that is different from innovation at downstream. Before we solve the problems of cooperative and pre-sorted collection and the problem of garbage pickers, it won't happen. We need innovation downstream, and we as companies and manufacturers, we need to provide or give attention to design at the source or upstream.
70% of the interviewees at startups, they said that their segment is suffering some kind of disruption, but 70% is investing in changes that will change their business. We can see a graph of a circularity measurement tool. And when we compare the left side, which are global companies, and the right one, which is South America, we can see that we don't have any problems with people. We are a little above the average when compared to other regions. We have a system deficit. We have a deficit in strategy, but the greatest gap lies in innovation. We can give several explanations, maybe because the company teams here in Brazil, they have tax and accounting teams that are much bigger than marketing and R&D. But this is one of the issues that we need to work out to move forward. This year, XP Investments held an event that was completely focused on ESG. This is the People, Planet, Profit, where this expression really gained force. And this is being taken very seriously in the financial market. BlackRock, that manages $7 trillion in assets, and Larry Fink is the CEO. Last year, he vetoed or fired 4,800 CEOs of companies. where BlackRock participated in because they did not demonstrate the demonstrated commitment towards ESG. Larry Fink, for him, the climate risk is a financial risk. NASDAQ allows you to compare your stock portfolio with regard to carbon emissions, waste generation, production of renewable energy, um, gender equality, and make comparisons among companies in controversial topics or beneficial ones. So this score will become more and more evident for decisions to be easier to be made. Here, I recommend this Netflix series that talks about the era of data. And in this world where data is gold, what is your score with regard to circularity? We are measured to take loans, how many followers we have on Instagram and Facebook, how many people visit our pages, and the circular economy cannot be not be different. And here we have measurement tools to facilitate to see this. Ellen MacArthur has the Circulatics, but the Cradle to Cradle, BCG, KPMG, and ISO, they have circularity proposals, not just for products, but also for their internal processes, their governance, and the governance of their departments, and for the company as a whole. Within the innovation at the origin, I like this image. This is the life cycle image, and the we'll also talk about the life cycle analysis. When we extract resources, they go through betterment, they go to converters, and also they will be identified as to their use. It goes through distribution, retail, and sometimes retail can reconnect secondary packaging to the life cycle and the consumers that can also recycle. 80% of the impact is defined in the brand, which defines how that material will be used. So the waste is a design mistake. And if so, there is a mistake in intention. So here we have a focus of innovation at the origin. Towards this effect, saying that material circulation starts at the origin, this is an example of the Tresemme packaging that developed this together with a converter, a dark pigment to not change the packaging, and this can be recognized by the recycling factory sensors so that it is not downgraded to downsiding. This is a clear example of collaboration research between the converter, the brand, and the recycling industry, showing what are the paths to be followed to pursue innovation at the origin. I like displaying this lean startup image. These are the startups that are doing the disruption. Startups are machines to validate hypotheses. They have a market hypothesis with regard to a service or a product. They collect these data, they learn, and they pivot this, and they improve this. This proposal is also from the post-war proposal of Lenin. So you know the PDIC. So data is also gold when we talk about innovation for circularity. Now, using data and tools, I will talk about the life cycle analysis. In 69, Coca-Cola had three internal questions. Which bottle would impact most, glass or plastic, environmental impacts, if it was more worthwhile for Coca-Cola to produce their own bottles or outsource, and was it better to recycle and or just one way? This study was in 75. It was presented in a scientific magazine so that scientists could comment on this, and they incited this discussion, which became the tool to analyze the life cycle. Coca-Cola summoned the resource and environmental profile The European branch called this eco balance, but in 78, Coke launched the PET bottle as an optimization of what they already had. From then on, we collected better databases to understand how to quantify these effects and place impacts that are measurable based on climate changes, ozone depletion that didn't exist back then. And we took almost 40 years to improve our databases and do more precise studies. Here's an example of how we could look at coffee, looking at these four types of impacts: the use of soil, water, energy, and climate. Red has to do with coffee supply, and darker blue, the brewing and drinking. So, land use, the greatest portion is during plantation. Water, also the greatest use is during plantation. And a little bit while we're preparing the coffee, and energy is more intensive when we prepare the coffee, when we heat the water, and the climate changes arising from this are during the plantation and during the preparation. I call your attention to a very thin line of packaging, which is the environmental impact of the packaging available there and how much is actually measured. So when we have a proposal to avoid plastic, we are placing at risk the delicious aroma, oxidation of the coffee, the experience of drinking fresh coffee on behalf of something that we imagine is doing good, removing the packaging, but we are placing at risk all the resources that were used to place coffee on our table. The greatest consumer of coffee in the world is not Germany, US, or Brazil. It's the sink drain. After prepared, 40% goes down the drain.
Ou porque a chaleira não tinha uma condição mínima de água para se
Maybe
preparar.
the coffee machine was not able to produce a smaller dose, and Nestle, via Nespresso, resolved by means of the single dose. They solved this impact of wasted coffee. If you don't communicate this, you have pressure from the market that if you don't recycle the capsule, I prefer wasting coffee in the old fashioned way. So, marketing teams, communication of these data is of the utmost importance. So, when we remove the packaging of a given material, the environmental impact is exponentially larger for each gram of food or product that we waste. When we increase the protection on the packaging, this is linear. So it's not the same, the environmental impact of increasing the packaging or removing the packaging. It's much worse to place your product under risk when you think like this. And here we go to the survey. When I saw the survey, I thought it was very emblematic regarding straws and the pressure they were suffering around the world. So I saw this study done by Braskem and Inciclo, and I thought this was very enlightening. When we compare different proposals to substitute the plastic straw, this considers the life cycle analysis and showing how the material is delivered to the market. So, washable straws, the disposable ones with polyethylene or cardboard material, considering the number of cycles. Steel, you can use 5 times more than glass, which breaks, and glass more 2 times more than bamboo, and thinking that all of them at the end of their use will wind up in a landfill. In other words, adequate disposal. So we placed this on the networks. We placed this on our sites. We asked people, and let's see what the result of this survey was. Here we have a very select group that understands the analysis of life cycle. 45% of the people answer that they prefer plastic straws when you have an aware choice due to a lesser impact. Then we have the steel straws with 21%. In third, we had disposable paper. And in fourth, we had washable bamboo straws. Normally, when I ask this question in not so select audiences, people choose bamboo, maybe because it's closer to people's hearts. It has a beautiful design coming from nature, and you have this idea that remits to sustainable. But when I show the life cycle analysis, there's a certain frustration because when we truly measure the effects of the impacts done by a tool, plastic by far imposes the lesser impact on these usage and disposal issues, and bamboo has the largest impact. Bamboo and glass and steel, they have an orange portion that's very large. This is the impact of washing and the use of detergent. All the environmental load that was brought to this cleaning will also impact because you chose to use the material in this way. Somebody asked me, but I can also recycle the plastic straw, right? So this is also another story. We need to understand the journey. Where does it go after we use it? Which has to do with innovation at the end of the chain. 56% in Brazil of this material winds up being collected by means of garbage collection points or street garbage collectors, even if it goes to a recycling co-op. In none of these situations will someone be able to use their time to separate a straw. So the straw in this case, its best destination is the landfill if it is necessary to use it. So this is a bit of what we need to work in Brazil with regard to this end of chain. The landfill, even though this is called the grave from cradle to grave, this is not the last impact. We have a decomposition, the emission of GHGs for a long period. Just for you to see, the dark portion is the food producing methane. Pink, a bit further up, is the decomposition of paper. So we have this impact that continues to be generated for many, many years. Here we see an example of a packaging change study and how important it is to present this, where a cardboard packaging for food was submitted to a study, and then they substituted this by plastic PET. And it was made clear that the impact was being assessed. So the PET packaging uses less material, and the impact is 37% less, and almost 3 times less environmental impact, and soil use also 3.5 times less. This was done by Brascam and is available. In terms of trends, the mega trends, I draw your attention here mainly to the circular management of materials. Brands and companies thought that this material should be ready to be inserted and designed for disassembly. The creation of models for reuse, less fresh material. This is pressure that comes to the market. Nuno also mentioned waste, and waste is food. We need to work in a collaborative fashion to connect, and recycled material needs to be of excellence in terms of quality, and it needs to perform likewise to fresh material. There's also bioplastics, biodegradables with their considerations depending on how they are disposed of, the compostable and monomaterials to facilitate reinsertion in circular economy areas. Of these three macro tendencies, I call your attention to measure data are gold. So we need to do the efficiency metrics of sustainability and circularity to prove this to people. Among these large companies I mentioned, for us to see where the focus and commitment is. So the focus and commitment of these great brands and retailers is in these first three lines. So 100% recyclable materials, the the increase in post-consumption resins, and besides recyclable, it needs to be recycled. So this needs to be done by the sector, and it is the responsibility of all for us to join hands and move forward with this. Few brands are betting on biodegradable, as we can see in this image. Here's a case, maybe for us to think a bit outside the box. So I'm bringing you an example of a box to illustrate this. This is a startup ready to scale up in China. They are using a plastic box for e-commerce. It is twice as expensive as conventional boxes, but due to its use, it is almost 30% cheaper in its use. There are 2 million boxes circulating around China with 20 operational centers, and I share these numbers that now 2,400 packagings are being delivered around the world. This is the size of the opportunity. Other movements that are really worth observing and how they're being measured. Coca-Cola in Latin America and Brazil redesigned the shape of its bottles by using its iconic design of the conventional Coca-Cola bottle to place reuse as one of the strategies and measuring its impacts. 47% less GHGs, 45% less use of water. Another example of a company that is betting not on reduction, but the robustness of packaging is Loop. They have subscription plans for you to return your packaging to the brands, and this created an impact of greater brand reputation with an impact measurement of 22 to 45% better environmental performance for the life cycle analysis. Another startup in the US and in the UK, the Cup Club, closed several large contracts with great brands to reuse cups. This is also possible, and they are studying this independently and have shown a reduction of 50% in GHGs when compared to traditional cups, even if you take on 10% loss of the cups. Other movements regarding innovation at the origin. Sprite in Asia removed the green dye to increase the value of recycling of its plastic. The Nestle also did this in Germany by removing the pigment in its packaging. So to conclude this, some care with regard to the tools for life cycle analysis. We should use it to highlight improvements of the solution. It works very well for this. The use to investigate the impact of change in external factors. If there is a law that you cannot bury plastic anymore, we need to restudy our base and see what is the final impact that could be generated, or of doing this in Asia or in Brazil. What are the differences in terms of impact in both places? Always do this to compare similar things. as we did with straws, for example, and be careful not to use the life cycle analysis at the beginning of the process because this can lead us to paths that we do not want. In summary, I believe that plastic will continue to be a design tool that is incredible as it was in the 20th century. We need to fit this with moderation in the best projects. In terms of reuse, it is the number one candidate to allow this coming and going of material and remind you that innovation does not stop. We are in an exponential area, and those who wait will be run over by new business models, not new material models. So the focus should be here. And I call upon the sector to join forces and continue to work towards this effect so you don't stop generating innovation. This is what I had to share. Thank you very much for your time, and I am now available for questions if necessary. I would like to thank Marcos Iorio, consultant of Eco Circular for regenerative projects. Yes, we have several questions. We have 7 minutes. Let's see what we are able to entertain of the request coming from the Congress participants. I will start with Marco's question. He commented the following question. He says that the great problem seems to be information marketing, but personnel, they have a great opportunity to explore for innovation in these companies. Wouldn't this be a way to move forward? He was stimulated uh, to think about this regarding the capsules. This is my personal story. Since 2001, I work in product marketing. And when I thought my life would dedicate itself to sustainability, I thought that as an actor of the marketing area, I was hearing what consumers wanted, and I needed to internally request the drivers for development. And at the same time, I needed to communicate this in the best possible way to the audience that would be palatable, easy to understand. And this is a great challenge. Around 2009, most companies they had sustainability actions, but only 2% would communicate this. So we're very bad at communicating, and I think most of this is due to the marketing departments having to study more deeply circular economy so it doesn't sound like greenwash or something that was not well thought through. And the company made an effort in the design to develop the best product. So this is a huge opportunity for the marketing teams. Nice. Now I'm going to read Wilson Thiago de Jesus Souza's question. What happens in the case of markets or companies that are more developed, not using more products that cause some kind of environmental impact, but bring these products to countries or regions that are less developed? For example, the coffee capsule that stopped being used in the US but came to Brazil. This example is one of success. If we use the life cycle analysis concept, it is favorable. What I believe is that in Hamburg, in Germany, they prohibited the plastic capsules because they were not recyclable in public environments, in public agencies. And we have a great measurement gap of these impacts. Imagine if we move away from capsules and go back to boiling coffee. We didn't have all the issues of climate changes, and we're just looking at the waste generated by the packaging at the end of the concept. So once again, this is a great communication problem. And the great risk in public hysteria is to go on a witch hunt without knowing everything behind this and not having the proper data for this. Everyone has an opinion on the social media, and sometimes these become laws. I recall that here in Brazil, during some time, they prohibited turning on your cell phones in gas stations. This started in a small town with a city commissioner, and all gas stations adhered to this. But we never saw this effectively occurring, but we transformed this into law before studying this subject. Now we have a question from Caroline de Souza Borges. She congratulates you for your talk and observed a life cycle analysis for straws and saw that the impact is much smaller than other materials. Based on this, doesn't it make any difference in using a common plastic straw and another one with biodegradable components? Professor Turra said it all. If we think that this straw did not go where it was supposed to, first, if we have the oxybio and it goes to the landfill, which would be where it should go, we place an additive for no need. If it leaks to the environment, we will generate microplastics. And if it goes to recycling, we will contaminate the other flow of materials that do not have the oxybio. So this is not greenwashing, this is dark washing. To place an additive of this sort, where you ruin everything, you don't resolve anything. You just resolve something in the mind of the consumer because he thinks he is making the best decision. If we really place this on the table, this is the worst decision to place an additive like this for recycling, burying, or improper disposal. Marcos, we have 1 minute. Could you please answer the question of Evelyn Toledo? She said, bread owners set their goals with regard to recycled material without a heavy approach for recycled material, awareness and separation. Will there be available recyclable material for all brands to achieve their goals? This is a great question for Brazil. We are very lagging with regard to goals and actions. If we look at this, we bet that everything was going to be resolved by recycling co-ops, but the great number is that only 15% of the material coming back to the industry comes from households, goes through selective collection, and goes to a triage co-op and goes back to the industry. And almost 85% of this material are autonomous collectors. So Brazil has a unique model that is an invisible network. We are looking at solving the 15%, and we have 85% without a plan. So what I hear from recycling companies is that they are really eager for material. They need material. So we need to seriously resolve this structuring of how to make these flows work in Brazil. And it's not throwing this in the lap of the brand owner or city halls. We need to have a pact towards this effect and work very seriously and without demagogy. Otherwise, we're not going to reach the objectives that companies are proposing.
So thank
Participação e contribuição aqui no quarto
for your
Congresso Brasileiro.
contributions in the
Obrigado, eu
fourth
que agradeço.
Brazilian Plastics Congress. Thank you.
Nós vamos unir aí
We
os
will now
palestrantes que já
have the
fizeram
6
suas
speakers together
tarde e
who
voltam
presented
agora
this
para
afternoon, and we will have our second debate of the day. I remind you that in order to get simultaneous translation, choose the language in the top left corner. Also, pay attention to the awards offered by the fourth CBP. Use the CBPlástico hashtag in social media, Instagram, Twitter, and find our publications in the Superplast store. Your Instagram, in order to participate, your Instagram account shouldn't be private. Also,